Hey everyone, welcome back. This is part 2. I bumped it back 5 seconds. Let me just see some. Okay, so it's Arabic. Well, let's just see. No, that's not going to help me, is it?
As you know your own children's and your parents' names, these names should come automatically to you. Because one of the sad things that I see today is students of knowledge, they know sports stars. If I name some basketball players or football players, and I'm not going to because I'll date myself, realizing I haven't watched sports for a long time, but if I did, you guys would know them. In some countries, soccer players. In some countries, cricket players. May Allah forgive us. For some of us, even the fusaq and fujjab that are movie actors, we know their names, and we know their histories, and we know what movies they made, and we know how many hits they made in a certain game, and how many yards they ran. You know, all this waste of time of fantasy football, and wasting our time with these kinds of things, looking at stats. But if I ask you...
I agree about the waste of time with fantasy football. I don't understand it, and I don't like it.
Who was Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi and what he wrote, and if you don't know that, then I'm ashamed to say I can't really consider you a student of knowledge. Until you know the ulama and you know their books and you know what they wrote and you're dedicated to that. Those are tullab al-ilm. Ibn Qudama, he became famous. Ibn Qudama.
I will counter by saying you can gain knowledge. If you have an interest in movies, I do. You have an interest in sports, I do. I'm not watching those to gain knowledge, not necessarily. I'm watching them to have an enjoyment. I read about presidents and stuff like that, you know, because I love to gain knowledge about that. I don't think you can gain knowledge specifically by only focusing on the Prophet and the companions. Some people, sure. And if that's what you're into, that's great. I watch videos about them. I find some of them fascinating. But it wouldn't replace my interest in learning about and learning more about American battles, you know, Civil War, War of Independence, presidents. Those people fascinate me, like maybe Abu Bakr might fascinate him, and he would want to read about him, and he would want to, you know, it's a different interest, but it doesn't mean I'm reading a book and not gaining knowledge. Some of it's solidifying because I already knew it, but I'm hearing it from a different source, so it kind of does back it up. But that's just unrelated. But you know, my point is that you don't have to. You don't gain knowledge just by focusing on this. You can gain knowledge focusing on anything. Sports is just, you know, it's enjoyable. So are movies, to me.
Even though, as I said, there are other ulama by that name, but he became famous. Ibn Qudama. He is al-Maqdisi. Al-Maqdisi means, even though his lineage goes back to Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, who's Qurayshi, from Mecca, but their family settled in Al-Quds. Al-Quds, the blessed place, may Allah free it from the Ikhwan al-Qird wal-Khinzir, from the Yahud. Yes, I'm still not scared to say that. So, may Allah free Al-Quds from the Yahud and bring it back to the Muslimin. He is from this blessed land, a land that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed. And he is also known as Al-Hanbali, because in fiqh, he was from the greatest of the ulama of the Hanabila. He is from the two shaykhan, the greatest ulama, the two great shaykhs of the Hanabila, one being him and the other being who? Excellent, mashallah. At least one of my old students is on point here. Al-Majduddin ibn Taymiyyah, the grandfather of Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah. These are the two shaykhs of the Hanabila. Muwaffaquddin ibn Taymiyyah. And he is from the greatest of the ulama who were the people of ijtihad within the madhab. He made a lot of ijtihad even within the madhab. He wasn't what you would call a muqallid. He didn't just make a blind taqleed. He looked at the dalail, and many times he would give rulings in his books against whatever was the mu'tamid of the madhab before him. And many of the ulama after his time, they would go to his books to know the standard of the madhab because of his ability, his ijtihad, his knowledge. I want to speak a little bit about his life, very briefly, and I want to also speak a little bit about the books he wrote. And inshallah, as a homework, all of the brothers here and the sisters here should get to know this alim. You should know him well, inshallah, by the next class. Muwaffiq al-Din ibn Qudama, he wrote in almost every field of Islamic knowledge. He was not somebody who's only good in a few subjects. Some of the ulama, may Allah reward them, they are only known for nahu. They're good in nahu. Like As-Sibawayh, he's a famous scholar of nahu. But can anybody name me a book he wrote in fiqh, or in hadith, ilm al-rijal, al-aqidah? No. And you will find some ulama, they're excellent in tafsir, but you will not find them writing in aqidah. And some ulama famous for aqidah and writing in aqidah and preserving it, but they will not have much in hadith. But Ibn Qudama is one of the rare ulama that wrote and was proficient in all of these ulum. He didn't just write in these ulum, but he was excellent in them. The first thing let's talk about is al-fiqh. From the books he wrote is Al-Umdat al-Fiqh. And it's a beautiful series of books he wrote. Umdat al-Fiqh, meaning the best or the top of al-Fiqh. And he wrote this as a beginner's book, a matan. And he wrote it very concise. And even though it's a matan, he filled it with dalail. He put proofs in it. You will find a hadith in it. And he will try to begin every bab with a sahih hadith. And this is the book that we were studying here in this masjid as well. Umdat al-Fiqh of Ibn Qudama. And for the one who graduates from this beginning book, that only gives one opinion, he doesn't get into khilaf, and only gives a few dalail, and only gives what is standard and acceptable according to Ibn Qudama, then he has the next book which he wrote himself to graduate the student to the next level. And that is Al-Muqni'. Al-Muqni' is a book which is a little bit bigger now, where now he gets into the khilaf within the Hanabila. He gets into the difference of opinion within the Hanbali madhab. Then when you graduate from that, he has the third level book, Al-Kafi. Al-Kafi, he gets into a lot of khilaf, but he still stays within the Hanabila, but he discusses a lot of dalail, a lot of proofs, and a lot of tarjih, and why something is rajih, and what is stronger, and why, and which is weaker. And he discusses a lot of detail that the beginning student would not be able to handle. And then he writes his final book in this series, and it's called Al-Mughni. When Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz, rahmatullah alayh, Al-Mufti, Al-Alim, Al-Lama, Shaykh ibn Baz, when he was asked which book is the greatest book of fiqh ever written, and you can find this fatwa, Al-Majmu' Al-Fatawa ibn Baz, rahmatullah alayh. When he was asked this, he mentioned many good books, but he said, if I had to choose one, if there's one, it's Al-Mughni. He said, this is the greatest book of fiqh ever written. I have it myself, and I brought just one jild of it. I brought just one volume of it. And I wanted to show you these books, because you as students of knowledge should get to know these books. The print I have has Al-Mughni and Sharh Al-Kabir. We'll discuss that book together, and it's about 18 volumes. Al-Mughni, Ibn Qudama in this book, he discusses all of the different opinions of all of the madahib, even of madahib that no longer existed in his time. And he discusses to the best of his ability all of their dalail, their proofs. And he says, this is the opinion of this madhab and this is their proof. And this is the opinion of another madhab and this is their proof. And then he shows the strongest opinion with the proof in the end and clarifies the issue. And that is why some of the ulama, they said it's a mawsu'a. It's an encyclopedia of the opinions of the ulama with their dalail. And many of the ulama who didn't even follow the same madhab as Ibn Qudama would rely upon al-Mughni to know their own madhab. We find the famous saying of Al-Izz Abdul Salam and he wrote that, and when he heard of the book Al-Mughni, Al-Izz Abdul Salam, when he heard of the book Al-Mughni, he stopped giving fatwa. And he said, I will not give fatwa until I read this book. Even though he was a Shafi'i. But he was so impressed when he heard about it, that he stopped giving fatwa, fearing that maybe he will give fatwa, and there will be dalail, proof that Ibn Qudama has collected that he didn't know. So you look at this amazing book. Ibn Qudama wrote also in Al-Aqidah many books. One of them we are studying now, Lum'atul I'tiqad, a standard book that has been studied since his time till our time. And there are many shuruh of it. It was recommended and it was explained by Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahmatullah alayh in a very easy to read, wonderful sharh that we will be benefiting from in this series of durus. It was also recommended and explained by Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan, and we'll be benefiting from that as well during these durus and many of the other ulama of our time. He wrote Al-Qadr, discussing the very difficult issue of Qadr. He wrote Dam al-Waswas. He wrote Al-Burhan fi Masalat al-Quran, explaining about the Quran and how it is the kalam of Allah. He also wrote Dam al-Tawil in Aqidah, explaining why giving meanings from your own intellect to the sifat of Allah, which is called Tawil in the science of Aqidah, is forbidden. The forbiddance of the ilm al-kalam or philosophy in Aqidah. He also wrote Dam al-Kalam, talking about the ilm al-kalam. He also wrote books in al-Tazkiyah, yani cleaning the heart and having a soft heart. He wrote the book Kitab al-Tawwabin, a book about Tawbah and beautiful stories of the earlier ulama and the earlier salaf al-salihin and their Tawbah and their repentance. A book that when you read, it softens the heart and makes a person to turn towards Tawbah. And I want to stop and point this out because many of our students of knowledge today are too concerned about rudud. They just want to read to make rad, to refute people and to look down on people and to show people wrong. But they are not concerned about their own hearts and their own a'mal and their own tazkiyah and their own softening of their hearts and their own tawbah and their own astaghfar. And this is a mistake which hardens the heart and misguides the people. But if you look at Ibn al-Qayyim and Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qudama and the earlier ulama, Ibn Rajab, they were the greatest of ulama even in writing about tazkiyah, about cleansing the heart. He wrote a book called Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasideen. And this is an amazing book. There is a book which is very famous, Ihya Ulumuddin by Al-Ghazali. Most of you sitting here have heard of it. Ihya Ulumuddin is a book by the famous Al-Ghazali, and it has many beneficial points. But as Imam al-Iraqi, the teacher of Ibn Hajar, he wrote a takhrij, a checking of it. And he wrote in his writing on it that there is no book on the face of the earth with more fabricated ahadith, more mawdu' ahadith than Ihya Ulumuddin of Al-Ghazali. It's not my word. Don't get carried away here. Al-Iraqi, Al-Hafiz al-Iraqi, he wrote about it. So this means that there are beneficial things in it, but there were many fabricated ahadith, which would misguide the student. So Ibn Jawzi, the great scholar Ibn Jawzi, who was a teacher of Ibn Qudama, he made a mukhtasar of it. He got rid of the fabrications and the fabricated ahadith, and he kept the beneficial points, and he wrote Minhaj al-Qasideen. And Ibn Qudama, he further summarized it, taking out anything that he even felt was too weak from the da'if ahadith, and keeping what he thought to be most authentic, and he wrote a beautiful book. It's called Mukhtasar the summarization, Minhaj al-Qasideen of Ibn Jawzi, which is a summarization of Ihya Ulumuddin, keeping what is beneficial and authentic in it. He wrote Al-Riqa wal-Buka, about softening the hearts and crying. Again, a book on tazkiyah. He wrote Al-Wasiyah, which is really his advice. He wrote Al-Mutahabbin Fillah, those that love each other for the sake of Allah. He wrote an amazing book in the ulum of hadith. You see now, he's an excellent scholar about the Quran, about the creation of the Quran and tafsir of Quran. He's a scholar in fiqh, in tazkiyah. But he was also a great scholar of hadith and the sciences of hadith. And he wrote a mukhtasir of the ilal al-hadith, of the defects in hadith. And he also wrote one of the standard books studied in usul al-fiqh till our time. In Al-Madinah and other places, this book is still being taught, Rawdat al-Nadir. Rawdat al-Nadir in usul al-fiqh, which was further summarized by a Tufi, which is called Al-Bulbul fil fiqh, or Mukhtasar Rawdat al-Nadir. An amazing book in usul al-fiqh. So you see, in all these fields, he was an amazing scholar. Ibn Qudama was born in a village called Jama'il, which is by Nablus, in Palestine, in what is occupied today. May Allah free it. And his family was known as a family of knowledgeable ulama. His first teacher was his father. He learned under his father, who was his first teacher who taught him. And by the age of 10, he had memorized the Quran. Some of the ulama said even earlier, like at the age of 7. But we know, definitely by 10, he was a hafiz of the Quran. He was from the Qur'an, he had memorized the Quran. And his family saw that he had a love and a yearning to learn more ilm. So after studying with the ulama of his town and his area by the age of 10, his father, they made hijrah. Just for his ilm. Just to teach him, they moved. And they went to Damascus, Sham, which was a center of knowledge at that time. At the age of 10, they went to Sham, to Damascus, to study with the ulama of Damascus. And he studied with them, and he memorized mutun. He memorized texts. The way the Salaf al-Salihin and the ulama that followed their path used to study, sitting with ulama in their halaqat, and benefiting from their akhlaq and their adab, and memorizing mutun and then reading them to the ulama and getting the ijazat and asanid in those mutun. So he memorized Mukhtasar al-Khiraqi. Mukhtasar al-Khiraqi, one of the amazing and well-known mutun of the Hanabila. It is the first matan in the madhab of Hanbali. And he memorized it by heart. And he went and he recited it to Abdul Qadir al-Jailani, the famous scholar, Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jailani, al-Shafi'i, thumma al-Hanbali, the one who wrote many books like Bunyat al-Talibin, who many people have made false stories about, but in reality was a great scholar of Islam. So Ibn Qudama went to him, and he went to him with his cousin. And he went with who is Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi. Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi, I was listening to one of the brothers, somebody had sent me an audio, somebody who was teaching this book incorrectly said, Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi wrote, Udda Sharh al-Umda. That's a mistake. Udda is written by Bahauddin al-Maqdisi, not Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi. Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi, he wrote this book, Al-Umdatul Ahkam. There is Umdatul Fiqh by Ibn Qudama. His cousin, Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi, he wrote Umdatul Ahkam. He was also an amazing scholar, a great scholar. But he is not the author of Al-Udda. The author of Udda is Bahauddin al-Maqdisi. We'll talk about him in a minute. Before I go on, I want to make some points about Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi, who was the companion of Ibn Qudama in his travels. He is the great scholar of Islam, Shaykh al-Hafid Taqiyuddin. His kunya is also Taqiyuddin, like Ibn Taymiyyah, Taqiyuddin Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayh. And his kunya, his laqab is Taqiyuddin, his kunya is Abu Muhammad. His name was Abdul Ghani ibn Abdul Wahid ibn Ali And he is also Al-Maqdisi, from the same family, Al-Hanbali, the great muhaddith and scholar. He wrote this book, Umdat al-Ahkam. And this is one of the books we also rely upon in our durus of the Umdatain.
All right, I'm going to pause it there. I'm getting, it's harder for me to understand him. Oh, that's me. It's harder for me to understand him. I'm picking up maybe 6 out of 10 words. It's just getting tougher, and the closed caption is just Arabic, and my reading of Arabic is not good. If it's non-existent, let's be honest. So it's getting more difficult, it seems, as it goes on. I don't even know the authors. I couldn't understand him for the authors, and I don't even know the name of the book. So, yeah, it's just getting difficult. But I'm going to pause it here, and then I will be back with the third and final part. And we'll go from there. Hopefully it picks up a little bit. It is a little bit slow, a little dry, I was told. But it's tough for me to understand him. He's talking to me and giving me names, and I'm kind of lost. Much like if I were to start telling people about Washington and the Fairfax and Sally Fairfax, and then get into Dr. James Craig and just a bunch of it, you would just be like, yeah, I don't know who those people are. And if you do, good on you. But I also am having difficulties hearing what he's saying. That's why I'm trying not to talk a whole lot, because interrupting him just makes it worse. But I'm getting there, I hope. So until part 3, have a good day, have a good night.